Okay, so now this is the episode about floating point variables. So we're actually going to go ahead and open our integer project. If you remember where you saved it at, I keep everything under code. I might have overwritten it. Let me try opening it from documents. If you did overwrite it like me, I guess we'll just create a new one. So instead, go ahead, create a new project, C++. We'll name it, float. So last time we had using comparison of 5. We were actually not going to do that this time. We're also going to use our template. And again, we're using the input.get. So let's go ahead and define some float variables. So float A, float B, and let's say float C. And how about doing something with those variables? Let's make some input from the user like last time. So let's say we're going to output choose A. Let's say choose a irregular. Regular numbers are anything with like decimals or fractional. So there you go. I'm going to say that the input operator is going to be just A. Assignment to A. Then we're going to say end line. So cout command end line. Don't forget semicolons. Those are important. That actually ends the command. So then let's say, okay, we can just copy paste and do the same thing 3 times, just changing our variables. So B, C, and also you're seeing me keep this all formatted nicely. In reality, it doesn't matter. The compiler will either read it up, down, or left to right. So I could do something like that would be perfectly acceptable, but it's not for our purposes in reading. So choose a second irregular number because we have 3 variables, and we're going to choose a third. Now let's actually find the sum. So we could do the sum of fractions like last time. So we could say output this is the sum of ratios and we're going to output the actual math. So that's going to be, we have 3 variables, right? So what we could do here is say, okay, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to do A divided by 3 space plus B divided by 3 plus C divided by 3 Now let's end our line first, though. Just to keep things neater, because otherwise, what happens if you don't end the line? Everything is going to be like given out in one long string of text. So there you go. So end our line, and now let's get the output of, say this is the main. This is the mean. So they're going to be exactly the same, as you will see. And so our output is then going to be A plus B plus C. Make sure you hold shift when you're clicking plus, divided by 3. So, yep. So let's go over this. Our variables are numbers, or they hold numbers, and they're floating point. So that means we can have, they don't have to be whole numbers. They could be fractional, decimal, whatever. And we're outputting this text. Remember, quotes always means text. Then we're inputting that value to A. Then B, we're inputting that to B. Then for the third number, we're inputting what we type to C. And then we use those variables later on to divide each by 3 and to output the statement. Now, C++ will do all of the math for you, or the compiler will do it. It'll try to figure it out. So that just becomes A thirds, B thirds, and C thirds. So A over 3 plus B over 3 plus C over 3, and this is all of them summed divided by 3. So go ahead and save and compile and run. And there was an issue right here where I forgot a semicolon. So let's choose 15.78, or yeah, 15.78. Choose the second one, 16.33. And last one, let's do 109.333. As you can see, they're exactly the same. There's no fallacy as there was with the using integers, because integers are whole counting numbers, while floating point digits, single precision floating point I believe is accurate to about 7 digits. Double precision is going to be somewhat more. Double precision is actually really good when you're dealing with really large or really small numbers. This right here is single precision. So, yep, that covers this part of floating point integers, and we use variables, which we learned in the last episode. So we got to use a little bit of both. So go ahead and save that. Again, links to this will be in the description in case you want to download it. And I'll also include the new template as v2 because I added the input.get. So if you want, you could actually add an end line here. No, an end line here, or even just a space. So what happens if we do a space and compile? You'll see that when I type these in, there's a space between there, so it's not like smushed together. Again, see there's that floating point, the single precision. You can see it rounded up to 3 decimals, 3 decimal points, 4 significant figures. So yeah. Also, while we're on this topic, try to experiment by yourselves, based like the basics of what we've covered so far, with like variables, input, output, and the only way you're really going to learn C++ is sort of how you also learn to use a computer. I'm not sure if this applies to everyone, but the way I learned to use a computer, it was just messing around with it, sort of like when you were a child playing with a toy, figuring out how it works. This is the same thing. And if you don't go in with that sort of mentality, it's not going to help you really. So, you know, try out your own things, see what happens if you leave out, uh, a semicolon, look at the build messages, try to understand what it's trying to say. Like, for example, here it says expected a semicolon before C output, and so it's like, okay, this can't be right. Expected a semicolon before go up one line, it's supposed to be right there. Um, the the build messages right here are very useful. So try and mess around with this and create your own little tiny programs. Maybe not comparing numbers. You could set the actual variables in here. Like I could add an extra variable, but you guys mess around with it and see what you guys get. So that concludes this episode.